This conference will now be recorded.
Hey everybody, it's 2:30. It's time for our Monday through Thursday 2:30 podcast. I'm up here right outside of Washington D.C. You can look at the Doppler radar and see that we got some big storms in the area, but hopefully we'll be able to complete our podcast without any difficulty. This is the podcast where you will hear the truth, the science about what actually happened in the opioid crisis, and as my goal is to complete the book in the month of July. I'm very excited about the book. I hope you are too. Um, uh, the proceeds from the sale of the book is what we will use to file our first lawsuits against the manufacturers and distributors for what they did to you and other people. And as I'm putting the book together, I'm going through the science, and it's just stunning how strong our position is. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. And it's just stunning how weak their position is. But while their position may be weak, they're in positions of power. Okay, they're the ones in the position of power, not us. Okay, we're not the ones in the position of power. They are. Their science is weak, their position is weak, but they're very effective at getting the controls of power in their hands and hanging on to power. And that's what we're up against. We're up against power. We're up against money. We're up against prestige. Okay, we will prevail, but it's going to be a slog. It's an uphill battle for us. It ain't going to be easy. But I wanted to share this image with you today because I've spent a lot of time on this image past few days. This is some data from our DNA analysis. This was back before we did, well, when we first decided we needed to do a DNA test, we needed some guidance on exactly where in the DNA we need to be looking. And what you're looking at there, this is an extremely important graphic. Okay, that's 16 addresses. Now, DNA has an address just like you have an address. Okay, ever since I had my first Domino's pizza delivery back in 1979, I remember it. I remember it. I have truly loved Domino's delivery pizza, still do to this day. Maybe not quite as enthusiastically as I did back in 1979, but in order for Domino's to give me a pizza, I got to give them an address. Okay, it's no different with DNA. Okay, in order to know where to do your testing, you got to have an address. Now, there's 3 billion addresses in the human genome, the human DNA. And what you're looking at are the 16 that are associated with the opioid crisis. Let me say that again, people. There are 3 billion addresses, and we narrowed it down to the 16. Okay, I'm not bragging. I'm not patting ourselves on the back. Okay, but I want you to know we're competent. Okay, in fact, we're darn competent, and we're determined. And when you combine competency and determination, there's not going to be any stopping us. Lord knows they've tried, and they're going to continue to try. I fully expect to be indicted. Okay, doesn't matter to me a bit. Okay, when you combine determination with competence, you're going to get, if it's possible to get to where you're going to get there. We're going to see this thing through. You're looking at the 16 addresses out of 3 billion that are associated with what happened to you. Okay, for all intents and purposes, that's your address. Now, if you look very closely at the 16 addresses, what you'll see is that we're comparing at each address. Okay, we're comparing the opioid naive to the opioid dependent. So take a moment and look at that. There's 8 gray lines and 8 white lines. Each separate one is an address. And you're comparing the opioid naive to the opioid dependent. Now, if what you have is a mental health diagnosis, if you've got some, mental health disorder in your brain, why in the heck would your DNA be different? Okay, if the FDA had done their job, which they didn't and still aren't, but just for the sake of discussion, let's pretend the FDA had done their job. Your DNA wouldn't be any different after you took the opioids, because part of the job of the FDA is to make sure that nothing harmful makes its way to you. Changing your DNA, particularly with something as dangerous as methylation, something as poisonous as methylation, changing your DNA is not something that a drug is supposed to do. Okay, this is a poisoning. That's what happened. It's a poisoning. It's a toxicity. Approaching it as a mental health disorder isn't going to get you anywhere but a bunch of dead people. And I feel badly for the dead people. Okay, there's 4 million of them, 5 million if you count the overdoses. Okay, there's no reason those people had to die except the incompetence at the FDA. That's what killed those people. That's why the name of the book is The FDA Genocide. But again, going back to this graphic, look at that graphic again. 8 white lines, 8 gray lines. Every one is a separate address, opioid naive, opioid dependent. And on every single one of those, you'll see that the number for the opioid dependent is bigger than the number for the opioid naive. They're not the same. Now, what you're actually looking at is the percentage of methylation. Percents are done from 0 to 100. So, and one of the things I want to point out to you, there's several things I want to point out. The changes are not that drastic. It's what I call the light switch phenomena. You walk into a room and it just takes a little bit of pressure from your finger to turn off the light switch. Same thing with your DNA. Okay, look at those addresses. Look for the letter CPG. Okay, those are the on-off switches in the DNA. The CPG islands are the on-off switches. The methylation is what turns them off. So the CPG island is the equivalent of the light switch on the wall, and the methylation is your finger. And just like it doesn't take a lot of pressure from your finger to turn off a light switch, it doesn't take a lot of pressure from methylation to turn off an area of the DNA. And that's what happened to you. I mean, it's that simple. We're not going to make it difficult. Part of your DNA got turned off. How did it get turned off? By methylation. Methylation specifically on a CPG island in your DNA. And obviously something important got turned off. Can we turn it back on? I don't know. We can't even get the experts to admit it got turned off. We're a long way away from having a conversation about getting it turned back on. First, let's get them to admit they turned it off. Idiots. Actually, I shouldn't use that word on my podcast, but it's hard not to. I've been using the word useful idiots in the book, and because that's what they are. They're helping the Chinese damage our country. The psychiatrists and the bureaucrats, they're helping the Chinese damage our country by pumping in the poison, the biological weapon that is fentanyl. So I call the psychiatrists and the bureaucrats useful idiots. I'll try to think of a better term, but it's kind of an effective term, useful idiots. What they are, they're useful idiots. Not for us, not for you, not for me. They're useful idiots for the Chinese to keep poisoning the gene pool of the Americans. Last thing I want to point out here, and let me tell you, I could go on for hours on this graphic. Okay, the amount of information that's in this thing is spectacular. But last thing I want to point out, okay, not all light switches are the same. Not all switches are the same. Okay, let's put it this way: some are light switches, some are breakers in the circuit in the circuit box, the breaker box. Okay, you turn off a light switch, you turn off a light. You turn off a breaker, you turn off part of a house. Okay, and there's an area for each gene. DNA is divided into genes. For each gene, there's an area called the promoter region. It's like a little control box for the DNA. You start turning off stuff in the control box, you're really going to screw stuff up. And I want you to know, of those 16 addresses you see right there, seven of them are in the promoter region. I'll do this from memory, but I believe it's 11, 8, 5, 2, 1, and 2 others. Anyway, 7 of those addresses are in the promoter region of the DNA, which means they're not just light switches, they're circuit breakers. And that's where the damage happened. It happened on those in the promoter region. Okay, you go to the Google and you look up methylation in the promoter region of the DNA. Okay, and you'll see that methylation in the promoter region of a gene is not something you want to have happen. Okay, but it's exactly what happened to you, and you don't have a mental health disorder. You're not crazy. Well, you may be crazy, but you're not crazy because you took the opioids. Maybe everybody's a little crazy, But you don't have opioid addiction. You never did, never will. Sure was convenient for them to label you that way, because then they could keep selling the opioids and keep making the money, which is certainly a driving force behind all this. Anyway, don't get me started. I'll go on and on and on for hours. I enjoy this. This graphic is a huge inspiration for me in the book. This book is going to be helpful. We are going to hold these people accountable for what they did. We're talking about 5 million dead. That's almost the size of the Jewish Holocaust. And just like the Nazis were held accountable, we're going to hold these bureaucrats accountable. So we'll hold here for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to us. Please post this podcast on your social media and everybody else's social media. Let's get the word out there. Let's get as many people following us as we can. We've got to get the sales of the book up, because that's how we get the first lawsuits filed. And just so you know, probably 80% of the money is just going to have to go into run everybody's DNA. It's expensive to run DNA. We can't expect people to have to pay for their own DNA analysis. So let's sell a bunch of books and let's get that done. Anyway, my name is Dr. Doug Smith. This is our Monday through Thursday podcast. Today's Tuesday. We will see you back here again tomorrow. By the way, we will do a podcast on Thursday. The 4th of July is not till Friday, unless I have my dates wrong. So we'll have a regular week. So we'll see all you guys back here tomorrow at 2:30. Thank you and have a great day. Thank you, Alex.